Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. As we continue with Part 6, Human Regeneration from Questions and Answers, Fundamentals of the Occult Sciences by Manly P. Hall. Human Regeneration. Part 6. What is the fall of man? It is still the belief of millions of members of the Christian Church that the fall of Adam was the original sin that must taint every human being who is born into this world. In spite of the advantages of education and the increasing standard of individual integrity, innumerable theologians are still ranting about Adam's fall and the apple in Eden's garden. Seemingly, it has never occurred to these brothers of the cloth that the story of Adam might have a mystical or philosophical meaning very different from the literal implications. The word Adam, meaning species or type, signifies humanity collectively. That is the wave of cosmic life that is now flowing through nature in the form of human beings. Adam is the protagonist, the archetypal or collective human idea. The Garden of Eden is the etheric sphere which surrounds the earth, the humidic world which was the abode of man before he descended into the experience of physical existence. Ether is called by the alchemists the quintessence or the fifth essence, a spiritual substance from which the four elements are differentiated. These are symbolized in the biblical account of the four rivers that flow out of Eden. The very physical body of the earth was precipitated out of the etheric substances. When the organization of the earth's surface had been accomplished, waves of life descended from the ethers and took upon themselves physical form. It is this descent of spiritual beings into the earth's material nature that constituted the fall. This fall was not the result of sin, but the soul's quest for experience. A young man starting out in life may leave the security of his own home to wander in the hazards of individual experience, and he may suffer deeply, go through extreme privation, but all these uncertainties and tribulations are necessary to the perfection of consciousness. In the same way, the human life wave flowed downward from the etheric paradise to become man, confronted with all the perplexities that beset man and guilty of all of the mistakes that men make. Yet all of this is part of the beautiful necessity of life. Gradually, through the ages, the sublimity that is locked within man's mortal nature begins to shine through, revealing the splendor of the inner self. Godlike men and women appear upon the earth, bearing witness to the godlikeness in all men. In the parable of the prodigal son, the wanderer who went out into the experiences of life was more honored upon his return than his virtuous brother who had remained at home. Man is a fallen angel, and his wings are well concealed, but in time he will regain their use and soar upward again to the heights from which he came. By his experience in matter, man shall indeed be greater than the angels, for he will have that which can only come from the experiences of searching and finding. It was no great evil that man should fall from his etheric homeland. The evil lies in his failure to rise again. When man took on the coat of skins and entered upon the mysterious course of racial unfoldment, he forgot the heights from which he had come. He forgot the purpose of living, and he forgot even the existence of his own inner soul. Now, after millions of years of growing up through the darkness, in the obscurity of forms, man is beginning to discover himself. Dimly, he perceives the purpose and sets himself to the task of regaining his lost estate. Aspiration in the human heart is man yearning for the higher life that faded out when he assumed the illusion of material existence. The fallen angel is preparing to ascend again. Explain the theory of human regeneration. Man is a spiritual being exiled to a world of matter. The great schools of ancient philosophy all agree that the material state is not natural to the soul, but is assumed for the purposes of experience. The involutionary processes described in the previous answer drew spirit into form. Here, the spiritual principles strive for equilibrium, producing the urge towards improvement, present at least potentially in all human beings. The urge to grow is present everywhere in nature. All creatures, from the least to the greatest, are unfolding or developing from within outwardly. In the human being, the urge to improve is expressed rationally, and man puts his intellect to work to devise means of cooperating consciously with the evolutionary processes. The arts, crafts, trades, and sciences are rudimentary expressions of the urge to grow. to release abilities and capacities, and to perfect the instruments of judgment. But education does not end with the training of the mind or the skilling of the hands. Education continues, urging man relentlessly on towards the perfection of himself. The intelligent man, realizing that the evolution of society is slowed down to accommodate the stragglers or the uninformed, founded systems of special instruction to assist advanced types. The result was the mystery schools, institutions that have appeared among all great civilizations. These schools developed systems of special culture intended to stimulate, train, and directionalize the metaphysical forces in the subjective nature of human beings. The formulas of these schools were called disciplines. The disciplines differed according to the requirements of various races and nations, but in all cases the end to be achieved was identical: the release of the true man from the limitations imposed by material organisms and material nature. The disciplines of the principal mystery schools can be classified under three general headings. 1. Occult disciplines. Under this heading may be grouped all the formulas of occult development that are based upon special exercises or processes. The Hindu yogas, karma, jnana, and raja are examples of discipline directed towards the refining of the body by special exercises to increase the rate of vibration of the physical atoms, thus making them more responsive to impulses of the spiritual principles. The tantric practices, mantra and mudra magic, and the reciting of sacred formulas, as the Om Mani Padme Hum formula, come under the same heading. Breathing exercises, and the focusing of the mind on various parts of the body, in the effort to open spiritual centers or to raise the kundalini, belong also under this classification. The occult exercises of meditation, concentration, retrospection, and the Taoist exercises such as the multiplication of personality are also aspects of occult disciplines. 2. Philosophical disciplines, all systems of moral and ethical culture based upon man's cooperation through understanding are properly philosophical disciplines. Platonism is an excellent example of a philosophical system which lifts man up to the realization of truth through the unfoldment of rationality. The inner life is released by putting the outer life into order. Buddhism is another example of a philosophical discipline accomplishing the purposes of a religion. As the Greeks expressed it, learning draws the soul gently from the body. For all beginners in occultism, the philosophical disciplines are the safest methods of approach. Man is never injured by learning, but he can be seriously injured if he attempts to stimulate occult forces which he cannot control. 3. Aesthetic disciplines. Aesthetics is founded upon the releasing, perfecting power of beauty. The arts, by cultivating the love of beauty, refine the individual. Of all the arts, the art of living beautifully is the highest. The end of aesthetics is to contribute the refining, redeeming power of beauty to every thought and action of life. Through outward grace, achieving inward grace, man approaches God. Ritual and ceremony are factors in aesthetic discipline. The impressiveness of the great cathedral, the beauty of fine painting, the inspiring voices of a great choir. All these are aesthetic factors in religion. They restate the significance of spiritual things by presenting truth dramatically and beautifully. From the earliest time, man has adorned the places of his worship with the highest expressions of his art. In India, the rock-hewn temples are adorned with the most exquisite carving. In Siam, the temple dancers honor the gods with patterns and postures cultivated for thousands of years. The Pythagoreans met the dawn with hymns and dancing to the soft voices of the lutes. Everywhere man has found expression for his religious emotions through art, and everywhere art, born of religion, has inspired men to higher personal standards of action. Whatever discipline man may choose, he desires as a consummation of it the release of the truth within himself. He longs to go forth out of the small into the great, out of the narrow house of his own body to the larger house which is the body of God. He realizes that only by improving himself can he rise above the illusions of the material world. This improvement can only come as the result of self-mastery. Self-mastery can only come from self-discipline. Therefore, discipline is the beginning. And man discovers that in conquering himself, he masters the whole world. Human regeneration is the intelligent man setting himself to the task of releasing his spiritual nature from bondage to the instincts and appetites of the animal nature. Is celibacy essential to spiritual development? Most of the great religious systems of the world have sponsored monastic orders, have placed their stamp of approval on the doctrine of religious celibacy, or more correctly, chastity. Christianity, which is the principal religious factor in the background of Western people, from the beginning advocated extreme asceticism as the surest way to escape the corrupting force of the flesh and the devil. Several of the early fathers of the Church advanced the hope that the universal acceptance of the vows of chastity would speedily bring about the depopulation of the earth and the end of mortal suffering. Monastic orders have flourished in China, India, Greece, Egypt, in fact, in practically all advanced systems of civilization. But in each case, only a certain type of humanity found solace or enlightenment through affiliation with them. Protestant Christianity broke away from many of the dogmas of the old church. The problem of celibacy was a major equation in the Reformation. Experience showed that not even the clergy flourished consistently under vows of chastity, and Martin Luther raised his voice strongly against the imposing of such strict regulations upon the lives of mortals. It was the medieval experience that the increase of monkish orders brought with it problems no end. General reforms were eventually necessary, and Protestantism is in reality only Reformed Catholicism, stripped of certain extreme attitudes but still permeated with the old psychology. Modern metaphysical organizations, deriving most of their authority from the past, are naturally concerned with the issue of celibacy. And students of metaphysics all over the world are trying to decide in their own way the correct interpretation of the philosophic maxim of moderation and sanity. Strictly speaking, asceticism and chastity are not identical terms, for asceticism is a large, inclusive term, and chastity is only one of its inferences. Asceticism is a complete renunciation of personal existence. The ascetic retires from life and all of its material emphases to devote his heart and mind to an uninterrupted contemplation of spiritual truths. Asceticism is renunciation of things and thoughts. It is natural at a certain stage of evolution and is only right when it is natural. Correctly speaking, the ascetic is not one who takes obligations, but one whose very life is naturally detached from the extremes of physical life. The true ascetic is born, not made, and under such conditions there is no conflict, no struggle to live up to something that is constantly in combat with appetites and desires. Asceticism is not suitable to the average metaphysician, whose degree of spiritual development is extremely dubious, and whose attachments to life are both real and intense. Asceticism is not suitable to the individual who must live in community existence and fight desperately for economic survival, and whose life is a constant struggle dominated by ambitions and responsibilities. Nor is chastity successful as the only virtue or the dominant virtue in life. It cannot be successful when it is in conflict with the normalcy of the individual. Strictly speaking, it is one of the most advanced of the metaphysical disciplines and is only suitable to highly advanced types. For the rest, it is a stupid blunder. Self-discipline begins in small matters and with the unfolding of consciousness increases in depth and intensity. Discipline is not the individual forcing himself to do something he does not want to do, but is rather inner conviction directing outer action. Discipline is living up to what one knows and not forcing oneself to live beyond one's understanding and capacity. Only when all of the thoughts and emotions have been brought to a high degree of moderation can the monastic life be assumed with any probability of success. Man does not escape either the temptations or responsibilities of life by running away from them to some secluded cloister. Rather, each individual must master life by the development of an inward strength that bestows sufficiency and the courage of enlightened action. Religion has an unpleasant habit of meddling in the personal problems of people when it should be far above all petty concerns, dedicated to great and enduring principles. Many modern metaphysical movements try to impose celibacy upon a diversified membership with the most disastrous results. Butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers develop the monastic complex. And though bound to physical life by every thought and emotion, they decide that inhibition is the road to glory. In fact, the decision is thrust upon them. A few years of study of metaphysical abstractions does not ensure the ascetic qualifications. When chastity is advocated for all of mankind, only the gravest misfortune can result. The average individual is simply unfitted for and psychologically unsuited to such a course of procedure. Remember that spirituality is truth, coming out of one and not one's personal ambition trying to force abstractions upon oneself. Right thought, right emotion, and right action so refine the outer life that ever more of inward reality shines through, enlightening, perfecting, and inspiring. One cannot kill out worldliness by violent effort, but worldliness dies out in those who have worked through it and finished the lessons it has to teach. While it is undoubtedly true that the great initiates and adepts have reached that point in their evolution where all physical attachments and physical emotions have been sublimated, it is a serious mistake for beginners in metaphysics to pattern their actions after the Mahatmas, without having the inner enlightenment and inner security which comes with great spiritual advancement. Many people overestimate their own enlightenment. They believe themselves to be highly advanced and on the very verge of cosmic consciousness, when, in reality, they have not reached even a reasonable degree of ordinary intelligence. People go about asking for the secret of illumination, who are unable to make any important intelligent decision in life. Neither educated, cultured, nor informed, neither wise, understanding, nor controlled, these well-meaning but foolish individuals are fully convinced that if they breathe right, eat right, or devoutly inhibit themselves, universal comprehension will descend upon them, and they will gain all without being anything. Extreme ascetic discipline for such people would be moral suicide. They are not ready for it, not even capable of understanding it, and certainly biologically unfitted for it. The fires have not died out. They have merely been suppressed in an heroic effort to assume the appearance of virtue. Well-meaning perhaps, but ineffectual. From a practical standpoint, then, we may say the vow of chastity is unnecessary to most truth seekers at their present state of evolution. In fact, it would be almost impossible for them to live consistently even the doctrine of moderation. Nor is it at all likely that in their present incarnation, these truth seekers will be greatly handicapped in their aspirations by well-regulated and moderate human relationships. There are numerous examples to prove that even a high degree of spirituality has been attained without extreme asceticism. To review the facts briefly, Confucius was married and the father of children. Buddha, possibly the most highly evolved of human beings, passed through the experience of marriage and fatherhood, but later renounced these relationships for the ascetic life. There is no evidence that his family relationship interfered finally with his illumination. His departure from human ties was not forced, but was the result of his own decision, based upon the deepest and most enlightened realization of his own peculiar work and ministry. Zoroaster was the father of several children, yet is included among the great world saviors and was the founder and head of one of the deepest of the ancient schools. Pythagoras married one of his own disciples, was the father of children, and his wife continued his school after his martyrdom. Muhammad was married, his wife Khadija being his first convert, and he was survived by one daughter. Hermes dedicated some of his deepest sermons to his son Tatian. Akhenaton, the first mystic in modern history, is shown in the ancient carvings with his wife Nefertiti and their children. This list could be increased indefinitely and indicates, it seems, that the average individual has no cause to worry about family relationships, preventing his usefulness and attainment. A list could also be built up of great mystics who chose the ascetic life. Proof can therefore be advanced to favor either side of the argument, but there is abundant evidence that human beings can be great, noble, and good, and still not retire entirely from social life. Certainly it is not necessary nor advisable to break up homes, possibly doing a deep and lasting injury to others, merely in a selfish desire to attain enlightenment at the expense of personal responsibility. We often wonder what would have happened to the world if the parents of the great philosophers and world teachers had chosen courses of celibacy and in their personal sanctification had prevented the incarnation of these great souls. In practical terms, there is no one better fitted to give protection and opportunity to highly evolved souls than deeply informed and deeply serious people who are trying to live well and think well. The ancient Brahmins regarded it as personal selfishness to avoid the family responsibility, though to grow out of it after the responsibility has been met, honestly and completely, was a spiritual virtue. Selfishness is never really philosophical, and those who think first of their own spirituality are usually not as really spiritual as those who think first of their collective responsibilities and try to fulfill honestly and wisely each of the duties of life. Let us say, therefore, that it is virtuous to moderate, dignify, and purify human relationships. That from the excess of ignorance we shall grow to the moderation of wisdom. Having brought all things to a moderate and ennobled plan, then, and then only, can the mind contemplate higher asceticism. Human society is built around the family relationship. The survival of society depends upon the family relationship, and the spiritual unfoldment of society depends upon the purification of the family relationship. The merit of right action is not to be ignored. Even the so-called advanced metaphysician has much to live up to, much to perfect, and much to purify before the issue of the ascetic life is vital or imminent. Is ambition for spiritual advancement ethical or proper? The driving force of ambition is entirely inconsistent with spiritual aspiration. It is impossible to storm the gates of heaven, and people who think of nothing but the advancement of their spiritual status are for the most part self-centered and disagreeable. In modern metaphysics, there has developed a hierarchy of old souls, as fine a collection of Pharisees as ever disgraced the good name of religion. Neglecting the responsibilities of daily living, surrounded by a miasma of pernicious piety, and totally indifferent to the spiritual and temporal rights of others, these metaphysical nuisances may be best described as hell-bent for heaven. It is right and proper that spiritual progress should be the highest aspiration of the enlightened human being. But spiritual progress is a gentle, natural growing up to light. Jacob Boehme, the German mystic, likened the unfolding of the human soul to the opening of a flower that grows up beautifully in the light, injuring nothing and untouched by the corrupting influence of pride. There are several pertinent references in the Christian Bible which the aristocracy of metaphysicians would do well to ponder. Humility and true superiority are always found together. As man grows wiser, he realizes more fully how little he can know and how insignificant he is. As the scriptures say, he that thinketh he standeth, take heed lest he fall. And he who would be the greatest amongst you, let him be the servant of all. Ambition cannot be completely divorced from pride and self-seeking. The soul that is capable of the conceit of selfishness is incapable of perceiving the real. Philosophy teaches man not that he shall be great, or that he shall be good, or that he may possess the virtues or achieve to high estate. Philosophy teaches rather that by the living of the mystical life, the human being becomes not great in himself, but only a channel or instrument through which universal good may flow into the world. When the true mystic has come close to truth, his only possible emotion is humility. Self ceases in the service of the real. He no longer cares whether he is anything or not. He is absorbed in a realization greater than himself, and in self-forgetfulness finds peace. How can we develop discrimination? According to the philosophy of the Greeks, man occupies a middle position in the sphere of consciousness, suspended between the extremes of perfect wisdom, truth or realization above, and ignorance, darkness or error below. In the thought of the Chinese, the universe consists of heaven, earth, and man, heaven above, earth below, and man partakes in certain measure of both superior and inferior. Plato and Confucius agree perfectly that man possesses within himself a moving power, the active capacity to verge at will towards either of the extremes by which he is bounded. Evolution, in classical philosophy, is man unfolding towards the superior. In the teaching of the ancient wisdom, the positive instruments of this unfoldment are the laws of reincarnation and karma. By these laws, man is inevitably moved towards consciousness and away from ignorance, which in the philosophical analysis is the absence of sufficient awareness. Discipline is the first requisite of the philosophic life. Discipline is self-imposed direction or control. The impulse towards improvement may arise from either an inward urge or from the comparisons of the outward life. Probably the first impulse towards improvement from contact with things of a superior nature. This contact inspires to greater personal effort or shames one through the forced realization of personal inferiority. From discipline, the life is gradually organized until a proper harmony of thought, emotion, and action frees the consciousness from the competitive strivings of temperamental excess, thus clarifying the viewpoint by impersonalizing the perspective. Integrity is possible only to the impersonal thinker, for any violent attachment or aversion distorts perspective and leads to a whole philosophy or psychology of life in which the elements or parts are asymmetrically arranged. After all, man has to put his own world in order, and we use the term his own world with special meaning. Only perfect illumination can see the world as it really is. All partly developed entities must see the world as they are, and it is impossible for an unbalanced individual to have proper perspective. Our perceptions and our realizations tint, tone, color, or discolor our every contact with life and every impulse that flows into us through the sensory perceptions. Discrimination cannot be that with which one starts, nor can it be assumed or even developed in a comparatively perfect form. It is like appreciation, skill, or discipline. It must develop gradually in every way consistent with the general bodily, psychical, and mental chemistry. Philosophy works from a number of fundamental premises. One of these is that balance or perspective is a product of disciplined control and the development of potential capacities. One man, moved by inner conviction, chooses to elevate himself, or as Plotinus says, verge towards the good. He makes a decision. By a dedication to this decision, and usually with the aid of some system or discipline of philosophy, he develops himself through conscious effort. As he develops, discrimination inevitably results from development. The more one is, the more one knows, and discrimination is one of the highest forms of knowledge. Primitive man is protected by general codes and standards established in society. But as man outgrows society, he finds its laws no longer sufficient to protect him and must depend upon himself, not only for courage of conviction, but for intelligence of program. In the thought of Porphyry, discrimination is abstinence, detachment, and the capacity to perceive the beautiful. Socrates declared discrimination to be the skill in the inward intellect to choose always and to cling to the one, the love of the beautiful, and to do the virtuous. Unfortunately, however, the standards of beauty, virtue, and integrity differ with the degree of evolution and the degree of discipline. Relatively speaking, discrimination is the power to do the best of that which is known, with the realization that the doing of the best increases the capacity to know. This increased capacity will in turn increase perspective. Empirically speaking, discrimination is the intellectual courage to choose from among all things that which is the final good. But as the final good is unknowable to that which has not achieved the ultimate in itself, discrimination always remains in practice the doing of the best that he knows. It is an undeniable fact that all men know better than they do. It is this interval between inward standard and outward action, an interval of weakness, of fear, of doubt, that shows clearly lack of discipline and the lack of devotion or dedication to principle. People constantly ask, "What shall I do?" Yet these very people contain the answer in themselves. The very urge to ask proves the presence of the answer. But man is always hoping that he will be told something more pleasant and easier than his own conviction. Simply stated, honest conviction leads to self-discipline. Self-discipline results in improvement. Improvement increases discrimination. And discrimination is the evidence of an acceptable unfoldment of self, and, as the Greeks called it, the flowing of the individual into the universal, or the verging towards truth. What is the mystical experience? Havelock Ellis, the distinguished psychologist in The Dance of Life, describes what he terms a mystical experience. This experience was a temporary extension of consciousness into universal values. For an instant, the inner and outer life assumed proper relationship to each other. That which was real assumed first place. That which was unreal was revealed as evident illusion. The inward consciousness which put life in order may be termed a mystical experience. Most people die without ever discovering what life really is. They float along on the surface of phenomenal existence, accepting without question the commonplace as the real. To accept the routine of eating, sleeping, and working as life is to accept the lesser in the presence of the greater. To be satisfied even with learning is to be less than the self. Yet the outside world, with its attachments and responsibilities, seems very near and very real, and the sphere of the sages, with its placid detachment, seems very distant and very difficult of accomplishing. It is the mystical experience which shows the error of this viewpoint. In reality, it is the world that is far away, and the peace of the inner life that is very near. To break up the old patterns of acceptance and to live the inward life is to rise victoriously above compromise and doubt. Yet this desirable end can only be accomplished when spiritual truths become realities to the personal consciousness. The mystical experience is the realization of the immanence of life, law, and love. It is the realization that truth is closer to the individual than his environment, his body, or his mind. It is also the realization that all the complicated circumstances of life are conspiring together towards the release of life from bondage to phenomena. It never occurs to most people that education is preparation for only the physical life of the individual. One man spends a lifetime studying banking, another gives 50 years to surgery, and a third spends his life with the geologist's hammer. In the end, these three men are going to depart from this life to a larger universal existence in which banking, surgery, and geology have no significance, but from the mastery of physical sciences may come the potentials of understanding. All knowledge is unimportant in itself, but important in the inferences that may arise from it. The arts and sciences are all gateways to the temple of the cosmos, doors to the house of true learning. Each art and science leads in the end to God. The mystical experience is the binding together of what a man knows and building it into what he is. It is a realization which results from man's final distillation of experience. It is the instant of enlightenment which renders all things significant. It is man ensouling what he knows. What is initiation? The word initiation actually means acceptance into a secret society and the arcana of that society. In occultism, initiation is acceptance into one of the secret schools of the occult sciences. For the modern truth seeker, initiation must be an inner experience, an inward unfoldment resulting in a definite increase of knowledge and understanding. Initiation is a student's conscious contact with the adepts and initiates of a bona fide mystery school. True initiation implies conscious clairvoyance and a high degree of personal integrity and discipline. Any initiation, so-called, which is not preceded by an adequate period of discipleship and proper instruction, can have no metaphysical significance. All the rituals and ceremonials of ancient initiation are but symbolic of spiritual processes, taking place in the unfolding organism of the sincere and intelligent disciple. Students of metaphysics read marvelous accounts of the old mystery temples in which, amidst solemn splendor, qualified candidates were raised into the light of truth. We would all like to join in the solemn processionals, bearing aloft the standards of our gods. We would like to hear the instructions given to the new initiates by the gloriously robed hierophant of the mysteries. Great would be our joy if, Apuleius-like, we could be carried through the elements and be brought face to face with the immortals. With the untrained mind, it is but one step from a fancy to a fact. The student reads of initiations far into the night in sleepy dreams of them, and in the morning awakens convinced in his own mind that he has experienced a divine adventure. Those who dream of initiations to come and long for that day when for them the heavens shall open and the mysteries of the soul be made clear, nearly all overlook a very important part of initiation rituals. In all such great systems as the Orphic, the Eleusinian, or the Mithraic, the ascent of man into the house of wisdom is preceded by his descent into the subterranean chambers of darkness, despair, and death. Years of suffering and preparation, hazards dangerous to life and limb, tests of the most exacting kind must be successfully passed by those who desire more knowledge than that which is the portion of ordinary folks. The Druid neophytes of Britain and Gaul were sent out to sea in open boats without rudder or oars, left to the will of Providence. If they were not drowned, they were accepted as favored by deity. In the Mithraic initiation, the neophyte was given a short and inadequate sword and sent alone into the darkness to fight wild beasts. In some of the Cretan rites, seekers after truth were left to wander for days without food or water in subterranean labyrinths where monstrous apparitions appeared to them and tested their courage at every step. Machinery has been found under the Egyptian temples, which reveals that the priests employed many mechanical devices to increase the hazards of the initiation rituals. Thus, an unwary victim might suddenly find the floor open beneath him and his body hurled downward onto the upturned points of spears. Artificial torrents were loosed upon him to batter his body against the cavern walls, or in chambers especially prepared for that purpose, the walls would suddenly burst into flame, forcing the neophyte to actually dash through sheets of fire or else be burned alive. Through all these tests, those who aspired to the higher truths were expected to remain calm and poised, to reason out their courses of procedure, and escape the pitfalls by the sheer force of intelligence, courage, and perseverance. Such as accomplished this were regarded as fit custodians of the spiritual secrets of life. How few modern seekers could cheerfully undergo such trials? All too many who claim to be highly advanced are incapable of surmounting the slightest obstacle or facing with equanimity the least discomfiture or disappointment. Utterly lacking the stuff of which greatness is made, these persons look forward to speedy enlightenment or even affirm that they are already of the body of the elect. We must agree with the elemental whom Shakespeare makes to say, "What fools these mortals be." It is true that the old temples with their subterranean horrors are gone, but new temples have arisen just as vast, in many ways just as great, and certainly fully as horrible. While life itself goes on, the mystery schools will continue, but the methods by which candidates for spiritual enlightenment will be tested differ with each civilization and are modified to meet the needs of every age. About us now rises a great and mysterious structure. We can call it the Temple of Civilization. Civilization, like all sacred structures, was built up by men in service to an ideal, or possibly more correctly, in bondage to an idea. Our world rises up about us, a gloomy mystery of labyrinthine involvements. Like the mystery temple, there are beautiful rooms above and terrible dungeons beneath. Its outer parts are gilded and adorned according to our noblest manner, but its foundations are being eaten away by dark creatures of the earth, and by the evils which men have cultivated in their quest for profits. Here is the new temple of initiation, where every day souls are tested as to their greatness and integrity, and where the gods of tomorrow are fighting the wild beasts of today's injustice and perversion. The new ritual is fitted for the new age. No circumambulating priests with lighted tapers. No invisible voices chanting hymns to strange gods. No glory, no jeweled crowns and pleated robes. Not much left in romance, but an abundance of facts in the temple of modern initiation. The ladder still leads upward to the stars. Man can still achieve his immortality, but the artistry and picturesqueness of the ancient religions have gone. Then, alas, we make a most unhappy discovery. We find that men are so interested in robes, crowns, and processionals that they practically refuse to be good without them. Some even confess that it was the pomp and not the virtue in which they were interested all the time, and that they see no great reason for inconveniencing themselves unless they be rewarded with a good measure of applause. Possibly men can fight tangible adversaries in the dark better than they can oppose intangible ones in the daylight. But the fact remains that many who would go out and slay lions for the glory of God, and their own as well, will not be honest, generous, or forgiving in their daily community existence. At the present time, we are living surrounded by karmic circumstances which we have created by our own actions, and from which we are supposed to receive a liberal education, and an education in liberality. A Tower of Babel built by greed and held together by crime is perilously near a collapse. The heyday of ulterior motive has passed as far as our civilization is concerned, and unless we make drastic efforts to correct the present evils, our days are numbered. The depression is the direct result of human selfishness as expressed through speculation, graft, and fictitious values, abetted by many lesser ills. At this time, those who believe that through study and thought they have come to a little better understanding of the laws governing life are faced with an opportunity to prove their intelligence by meeting the present condition in a truly philosophic spirit. Here is a great initiation, one of the greatest that the chemistries of life have ever precipitated. There must be a division of civilization. That part which has courage, integrity, and vision will go on to become the forerunners of a new race. The rest will vanish as have the races that went before. Can the philosophically minded individual take the present conditions and use them as opportunities for growth and rational achievement? The test of philosophy is its sufficiency in time of adversity. For to those who actually possess spiritual insight, there is an ever-present contentment and realization of good that is utterly independent of possession. A neophyte in the modern mystery school is armed with the short sword of a little wisdom and launched into the darkness of an irrational world to fight the instincts of possession and selfishness. Having overcome these, the candidate has passed a real initiation test, just as surely as those in the caverns of the Mithraic mystery. Never has there been greater incentive to a betterment of the general condition, and those who meet the present crisis, according to the highest standards which they know, must be the forerunners and pioneers of a better order of things to come upon the earth. What is illumination? Illumination, according to the definition of mysticism, is inward enlightenment. Truth is light, not physical light, but soul light. As plants in the field grow up through the earth to the light of the sun, so man grows up through the dark earth of nature to the light of truth. Illumination may be either rational or intuitional. In the first, man discovers through reason his participation in the life of all things. He moves from reason to realization. In the second, emotion, refined and spiritualized, acts as an occult sympathy, with the result that the soul feels reality. Emotional conviction raises the consciousness by enthusiasm to the real. The end achieved in both cases is the same, but one is an occult and the other a mystical approach. Illumination is not the end of growth. It is really man's first awareness that he is a growing part of a growing whole. Through the study of books, man gains an intellectual acceptance of the great laws of life, but when he examines himself, he realizes that he does not know that these laws are true. He only thinks they are true. He may live up to his standard of thinking and must live up to it if his mental conviction is to be perfected by spiritual realization. Illumination is the proving of that which is believed. The inward perceptions perceive actually that which the mind has accepted because of logic or consistency. This change produces a tremendous influence in the individual. Fact, being within, produces strength and security. Weakness disappears from the soul and man is positive and the world becomes negative. Instead of man being a small uncertainty and a great certainty, man himself becomes certain. The increased strength and dedication makes possible the higher steps of evolution that lie beyond. Illumination should not be regarded as the end of the mystical life, but rather the true beginning of it. A person is not perfect because he is illumined, but rather is one step closer to perfection because of the establishment of a new and higher standard of understanding. Illumination should never be regarded as a solution to personal problems in the sense that it brings with it any improvement of the temporal state. Illumination does not confer health, happiness, and prosperity in material matters. It confers the ability to understand more clearly the reason why things happen. It increases patience, deepens appreciation, and strengthens the virtues. Illumination also brings a measure of detachment from material overemphasis. It does not decrease the difficulties of living, but gives greater strength to overcome these difficulties. There are many degrees of illumination. The small boy in school is illumined by the increase of his knowledge. The disciple, seeing spiritual things for the first time, is illumined by the extension of his horizon. The great adept who unfolds in rising from one exalted state to another is also illumined by the new experiences of his growth. Illumination, like life, is a perpetual unfoldment, but the term is most often used to signify man's first flash of the eternal. What is cosmic consciousness? The term cosmic consciousness literally means the consciousness of the cosmos, or the consciousness that ensouls the cosmos. Cosmic consciousness is therefore the pattern binder, the realization of wholeness by which all the elements of the universe are bound into a cosmic unity. Only the cosmos can know the cosmos, for in this case knowing is not the product of thinking. Knowing is an attribute of being, and wholeness ensouls the whole. A certain type of metaphysician talks glibly about cosmic consciousness. He may refer to his own consciousness as being cosmic or one with the cosmos. But unfortunately, while man remains man, he is not cosmic. When he becomes cosmic, he is no longer man. Between the human being and cosmic consciousness is the whole interval of magnitudes and multitudes which divides the human being from the cosmos. Inconceivable eons of time must pass before man can unfold a cosmos from within himself and ensule it with his realization. If a student cannot understand his brother who is similar to himself, how can he understand the cosmos, which contains the similitudes of all things? The particular can never grasp the universal, and only ages of universalization can bring to man the capacity to mingle his own personal attitudes with the streams of purposes which make up life. What metaphysicians mean by cosmic consciousness, as referred to their own experiences, is an extension of consciousness. Such an extension brings with it a certain measure of understanding concerning matters not previously understood, a certain measure of realization concerning matters not previously realized. Perceiving a little more, man mistakes the little for the all. Being a little wiser, he mistakes a little wisdom for all wisdom, exaggerating the significance of his experience. It may be that through long studies, a devout person may suddenly awake to the realization of the universality of God or the fundamental identity of life. These discoveries, flowing in upon the mind, overwhelm the intellect with their magnitude and significance. Seeing values for the first time and lifted to a high state of exaltation, a little improvement assumes the proportion of ultimates. Perspective is lost in an overwhelming experience. The student does not realize that he is only at the beginning of understanding. He has forgotten that even the gods grow. No matter how deep and sincere our consciousness may be, perfection is not yet. It is one extension of realization to understand that the cosmos is consciousness, but it is a still more advanced state of realization to achieve identity with the consciousness of the cosmos. The first is possible to man, the second is remote even to the gods. How do you reconcile the Eastern teaching of non-action and the Western teaching of service to humanity? The difficulty here arising is due to a misunderstanding of the term non-action. Eastern schools do not preach inertia, but rather that the wise man performs no action that is not true, beautiful, and necessary. The Oriental philosopher is more of a realist in many ways than is the Occidental thinker. Thousands of years of cultural experience has taught Asia lessons which the West has yet to learn. The East realizes that most action is unnecessary and unimportant. To strive after things is vanity, to desire things is folly, and to think that you can help others is excessive optimism. For these reasons, the Oriental sage leans on his forked stick and lets the world go by, realizing that no matter what we may try to do, it will still go by, and the man does not live who can save ignorant human beings from the rewards of their own stupidity. The Easterner is fundamentally a fatalist. He is not cynical nor unsympathetic nor inhuman, but experience has taught him that each individual must live his own life and find truth in his own way. So as the sage sits by the road, it may occur that someone of the passers-by may turn off and come to him. This is also fatalism to the Eastern mind, for those who are ready will seek for those who know, and there is no need for wise men to cry their wares. When the disciple finds his guru, the master gives him no encouragement. Those who are ready for knowledge need no encouragement, and all the encouragement in the world is useless to those who are not ready. Nor does the Eastern sage normally concern himself with matters outside of his own intellectual province. It is the duty of a physician to heal the sick, for farmers to till the ground, for shopkeepers to buy and sell, for priests to dust off the altars, and of pundits to teach. It is the sage's duty to perform that labor which no other man can perform, the instruction of the soul. Farmers cannot do the work of philosophers, nor should philosophers do the work of farmers. Each on his own plane or level should perform the work suitable to himself, and it is the duty of the philosopher to wait longer, and then wait some more. When he has waited long enough, those who need that which he alone can give will struggle their way to him. Certain of this, the Asiatic mystic meditates through the years, oblivious to the change of empire about him. Nations may rise and fall, wars and pestilences may come and go, but in every age and under all conditions, there will be some who will need wisdom, will appreciate it, and know how to use it. So the mystic waits, realizing that, as Walt Whitman said, that which is his own shall know his face. But the Westerner has a different attitude. His religions have extolled the virtues of charity, humanitarianism, and service to mankind. The Western mystic believes that in feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, and ministering to the physical needs of the indigent, he is living up to the highest standards of his faith. There can be no doubt that this attitude has made life easier for thousands of people, and we highly honor in this Western world those who dedicate themselves and their means to the alleviation of human suffering and human want. More than this, we look forward to a time where new economics and social adjustment will bring economic security to all. The Western religions have the strongest social vision, and this has resulted in a far better material state than that enjoyed by Eastern peoples. Nor would it be right to deny that good motive frequently inspires the Westerner's altruism. He believes in being a good Samaritan, he believes in helping all who need, and his purse is always open in time of distress or crisis. The term Christian charity is frequently used to describe the financial generosity of the Occidental. Democracy contributes also to this viewpoint. Jesus affirmed universal brotherhood, and his inferences were definitely democratic. The Occidental has elevated the concept of democracy to the dignity of religion, and firmly of the belief that he is able to legislate the equality of man. He is convinced that he is contributing to the permanent betterment of the whole human race. Western religion has no esoteric schools to direct the religious aspirations of the laity. The obscuration of the secret doctrine has left action as the only means of applying spiritual ideals. Men and women who ought to be hard at work studying the laws of nature are reduced to performing those little acts of kindness, which, though perfectly good in themselves, are not the real ultimate of religion. Yet those long experienced in little acts of kindness find that helping people is the most difficult thing in the world. A wealthy man with a fortune to give away can only pray to all-wise providence that his generosity will not do more harm than good. The philanthropist has extraordinary experiences. In trying to lift men up, he usually only casts them down. The more he does, the more he can do, and he often finds an ungrateful world that sops up his charity and makes bad karma for itself in the process. Charity obscures the working of the law of cause and effect, a thing in itself dangerous. And when a whole civilization develops humanitarianism without depth of understanding, the result is demoralizing to the integrity of the masses of people. A man who has any reason to believe that he can enjoy the securities of life as the result of the benevolence of others rapidly loses interest in improving himself. Possibly the best examples of service without understanding are charitable institutions. No one can deny that while they exist and while society makes them necessary, they must be supported. But it is a strange thing that the Christian charity that takes care of the helpless did not assert itself in preventing it rather than in curing it. Under our present system of civilization, charitable institutions are absolute proofs of the lack of Christianity or any other religious principle in the economic and social fabric. The forethought comes behind. Rich men trying to give away money have realized the fallacy of passing it on to individuals. The result is vast conscience funds are being turned over to educational and scientific institutions to be used to increase the horizon of the young or improve the health of the aged. But here again the charity is blocked. Education and science lack the perspective themselves to consider any of man's needs above the purely physical and economic. The richest nation in the world suddenly discovers that there is nothing important which money can buy. Charity comes to nothing because nothing you can give an individual can make him truly happy, truly safe, or truly wise. We can take care of the hunger in his body, but the hunger in his soul is beyond our capacity to feed. Service is therefore limited by lack of religious understanding. We can only do the thing that we know to do, and we know so very little about life and law and love that we are poor guardians over these natural truths, and worse as ministrators. We mean well, but we have ignored philosophy so long we really do not know what we mean. We try, but the trial and error system seems productive mostly of error. It may dawn upon the Western world sometime that there is definite need in its world for that inner sufficiency, which is embodied in the Oriental philosopher leaning on his forked stick under some banana palm. He knows much and sits still. We know little and run around unceasingly. We are trying to do good, but he is the one who knows what good is. Is it not also possible that the inaction of the Eastern sage has so compelling a force about it that in the end, the Western world will make a pilgrimage to his feet? If and when this occurs, the truth will be apparent that his silent meditation was more powerful, more significant, and more enduring than all the institutions which we have built in the desperate effort to change the fundamentals of human nature by outward means. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.